you, Carter, and again, happy Labor Day to everybody. Finally here in game week, we are very excited to be opening up our season on Thursday night. This is an occasion that we were not sure was going to happen, and we've got to give a lot of credit first to our administration, starting with the university president through our athletic department administration, for clearing a pathway, an avenue for this to be able to happen. And then really the credit's got to go to our players who have been remarkable in the way that they've taken care of each other, taken care of themselves, and really since June 15th when we first started coming back on campus, and the way that they've protected the team and each other has been really cool to watch. And because of that, we have an opportunity to play a very good UAB team on Thursday night. This is a team that's already played a game, a team that's used to winning. 28 wins over the last 3 years, 2 division championships. I think second or third in the country in the most returning production and experience. A very old team. Statistically, when you sort of look under the hood, they really don't have a weakness. I mean, what pretty much everything they do extraordinarily well, especially on the defense side of the ball. A top 10 defense the last 2 years, third in the country in third down defense a year ago. You look at their numbers, yards per run, yards per pass. They're good in all those things. They're just a Bill Clark football team is going to always be very sound defensively. They're going to tackle well, and they're going to make you earn everything. A lot of man coverage, making just things very difficult to sustain drives on offense. And then on the other side of the ball, when they've got the ball, you've got a quarterback who's got 11 career wins. You have a running back who only Travis Etienne right now has more rushing yards in college football. I mean, he's the second active career rushing leader in all of college football. And then they had a stable of other guys who had a big night in their opener. And then obviously with Watkins on the outside, a guy that's going to probably get a look at the Senior Bowl. 2 tight ends that kind of went crazy last Thursday night, an offensive line that's got 4 guys with double-digit starts. So it's a team that's used to winning, and we will certainly we've been preparing for them basically for the better part of the last 2 weeks. Our guys are excited to go play, and then the fact that we will have some fans at Hard Rock Stadium is going to be. Again, we didn't know if we'd have any. We didn't know if we'd be in Hard Rock Stadium. So the fact that we'll be able to be out there with some of our fans and see them again is exciting for all of our guys. And with that, I'll open up with questions.
Okay, we'll kick it off with Christopher Stock from InsideTheU. Chris, go ahead.
Yeah, Manny, you touched on the running game that UAB has. Can you speak more about maybe the challenges that Spencer, particularly with Stanley, a little bit bigger backs, and then also how did Spencer look to you, particularly last week after dealing with injuries last season?
Yeah, we knew he was not 100% a year ago, but the thing that stands out, anytime you're in an opener, tackling is always going to be a big deal. So their ability to present a big back, a back that can run through tackles, and again, a team who's played a game and has tackled and been tackled, as opposed to us who have only been able to tackle in scrimmage situations, which of course we all lost due to missing some of spring football. So that's going to be a challenge because you have to run your feet on contact. You have to wrap up. So again, anytime you got a back with his size and strength, it's sort of a lesson for everybody. But it's even on the perimeter with the other guys. I mean, just yards after the catch with their wideouts. I mean, as we know that tackling is a big part of our identity on defense, and we got to be ready to go from the first minute.
Okay, next up we've got Gary Furman from Kingsport. Gary, go ahead.
Hey Manny, how are you? It's been such an unusual offseason in so many ways, obviously. How much angst are you going through as a head coach that you've covered all the bases going into a season and all the different scenarios that could possibly come into play? And how much longer is that list than it would normally be 4 days before the season opener?
Well, I mean, you're always going to have your your checklist before a season opener, and you all the situations to make sure you've hit all the things that can come up in a game to make sure that you're prepared. And that's kind of the easy part because that doesn't change too much year to year. I mean, even to this day, Gary, I mean, we're still working out things just in the COVID world of, how we travel on a bus and just how we do this and how we do that. I mean, you're solving all of these problems in real time, and will be throughout the year, because one thing, again, we've learned in 2020 is the situation is always evolving. It's always changing. But you can't run from it. I don't think it creates stress. It's just the normalcy of constantly evolving as we learn more and more about the way things are now.
Okay, next up, we've got David Lake from 24/7 Sports. David, go ahead.
Hey, Coach, wanted to ask you, if at this point, obviously the season hasn't started, but do you have any sense on how this team responds to adversity, maybe compared to last year's team? Is that something you don't find out until you start getting into the season, or were there things that you saw during camp that has you encouraged in that regard?
Yeah, Dave, that's a good question. I mean, you don't really know until you get into the season. You can certainly try to test them and put them through some adversity in a camp setting, which I think we've done. I think the players themselves, just their knowledge and their experience of some of the things that they saw a year ago helps foster some different leadership. But at the end of the day, you got to get in the games and you got to find out, what you're all about. And remember, a year ago when we opened with Florida, we faced all kinds of adversity that night and came through it pretty well. Didn't win the game, but showed some fight and showed some backbone. So even, it's easy to make an observation after week one and think you might have this or that figured out. And again, this year is going to be a long year. It's going to be a marathon. We know there's all kinds of uncertainty, just as what we're going to, go on between now and December. And if there's ever been the year that the cliche of 1 week at a time is true, this is 2020 is the year for that.
Next up, we've got Matt Baker from the Tampa Bay Times. Matt, go ahead.
Hey, Manny. Obviously, one of the weird parts of this year is the attendance that you touched on. I'm curious, have you reached out and talked to other coaches who have already been through that, either at the college level or pros, either no crowds or limited crowds, to get a feel for what that's going to be like for you and your team?
No, because not really sure any of us knows. I mean, the other sports that have been playing without fans, and obviously there were a couple games this past weekend that had some, UAB played in front of some fans at Legion Field last week. But, I think some of the conversations that have taken place with friends of mine and either in college football or in some other sports is just the dynamic of team this year, and how really important that is, and how important the connections of a team are this year, because, again, you always say we're all counting on each other, but this year we know we are all counting on one another. It's just a different deal. And, whether you're looking at the way that things have played out in the NBA bubble or will play out in college football, I think there's a little bit of that unknown of how everybody will react to the unusual circumstances of 2020.
Next up, we've got Manny Navarro from The Athletic. Manny, go ahead.
Hey, Coach Diaz. Wanted to ask you, you mentioned that this last scrimmage was kind of the, final position battles, et cetera. Which ones were kind of the toughest ones to decide starters at? I know we just got the depth chart from you guys. And then I know that they're using electronic whistles this year. Wanted you to ask you about that and how much exposure the players got to that in practice.
Yeah, we have. I'll start with the electronic whistles. At all of our scrimmages, we had ACC officials and college officials there, and they use the electronic whistles. There's definitely a difference with them. I just don't. I don't feel like you get the sort of the bass that comes in a real whistle, but it is what it is. It didn't seem to be an issue when we were in the stadium, when we had some ambient noise and music and stuff, that was going on as well. So it'll just, it's all part of the field. Everybody will have to manage it. In terms of the position battles, I would say probably some of the toughest ones, striker with Gilbert Frierson and Keontra Smith. I think both those guys have earned the right to call themselves a starter. Safety for sure. With Bubba Bolden, Gervin Hall, and Amari Carter. I mean, all three of those guys are line one guys. They're all starters, and will all play a lot. Yeah, I mean, those were definitely the two, I would say, most hotly contested battles, and battles that really have no loser. I think that's just great for us and great for our depth.
Thanks.
Okay, next up, we've got Chris Perkins from Sports Illustrated. Chris, you can go ahead.
Hey, Manny, at the risk of sounding ridiculous here, my question is kind of game adjacent and not directly game related, but the turnover chain. Is it going to be back during this COVID-19 season? Do you have to make any special adaptations, and are there any design changes?
Chris, there's far more ridiculous questions than you can ask than is the turnover chain back. Gosh, I was bracing myself. Yes, the turnover chain is back. We'll have to wait until Thursday night. The guys do what they're supposed to do and get after the ball for it to come back. It'll be a little bit different as it is every year. It's not a turnover mask, which would have made some sense in this year, but we weren't thinking ahead in time. So excited again about the process of getting turnovers. We know it's a big part of winning games, especially in openers. Turnovers really took a game last week that UAB played against Central Arkansas that they really should have won by 5 or 6 touchdowns, and made that game look a lot closer than it was because of some ball security issues. So turnovers in openers, we saw it hurt us a year ago, are of utmost importance.
And do you guys have to, I assume you have to sanitize it after every player wears it this season, is that correct?
Yeah, we'll have to get it wiped down like we have done with everything else.
Okay, next up, I believe I see David Teal from the Richmond Times-Dispatch. David, go ahead.
Manny, you mentioned in your opening not knowing whether you would get to week 1 and the uncertainty of the season. Has it been encouraging, at least to date, that I don't believe we've seen any post-game issues with the virus for teams that have played?
I absolutely think that's the case. But as we have told our players with every test, we are just earning the right to get to the next game. And so I think we have seen around college football, if you just look at some of the testing numbers that are being released, that the guys can protect themselves pretty well and help keep the spread down, even as a society. When you look at the numbers in Dade County and where they've been at and how they're going so far down compared to where they were 6, 7, 8 weeks ago. And obviously now with our testing protocol picking up, we're testing 3 times a week. The players will be tested 48 hours and 24 hours. Well, within 48 and 24 hours of kickoff, and then just after the game as well. So, I think a lot of the testing works as well.
And how much of an asset has it been? You mentioned also your administration, to have a university president that is so steeped in healthcare and just knows it.
Well, we don't have to guess, right? I mean, and we know this has been a year where, unfortunately, we don't give sometimes the experts the respect that they deserve. But on this campus, we have an expert. And so when we're looking for, sort of a North Star to guide us on should we do this and should we do that, we're not guessing. We're not having to take some information from who knows where. We've got someone that's been through this and understands how to hold everybody on his campus accountable to try to make sure that we can do the right things. But ultimately, it still has to come down to, like any coach, you got to have the players. They have to execute the game plan, and that's what I'm proud of. Is that from the top down, we've got great leadership, and then our guys have done a really nice job of following that plan to this point to get us to where we have the chance to play a game on Thursday.
We'll go next to David Furones from the Sun Sentinel. David, go ahead.
Hey, Manny, first, I want to make sure, is everyone healthy going into the opener? Do you have any guys that you need to let us know that are out going in?
No, I think we should be good to go from an injury standpoint.
Okay, great. And then also wanted to ask about a couple of the position battles on the offensive side, left side of the line in determining John Campbell and Usman Traore as the starters there, and also how you'll figure to divvy up running back reps behind Cameron Harris. You have an or there between Jalen Knight and Don Chaney, of course.
Yeah, I mean, both those guys have have been really exciting. I think you got to get into the game and you'll find out exactly how the reps will go at running back and just sort of see. I mean, like I think with all young guys, they got, getting into the first game, they got to, be able to get their feet wet a little bit. But we'll have a plan for that for Thursday. Left side of the line, I think John has been very consistent throughout camp. And that's taking nothing against Zion, because Zion, is still a guy that obviously started a lot of games for us, and we feel very confident if he was in the starting lineup now as a tackle or as a guard. And again, I just think Usman has just been super steady at left guard. He's a guy that just goes about his business, just gets his job done. Not a lot of fuss, brings good toughness there, and we feel good about that left side of the line.
Next up, Susan Miller-Degnan from the Herald. Susan, go ahead.
Hey, Manny. What did N'Kosi Perry do to earn the backup job? Also, what did Tyler Van Dyke show you, as a true freshman? This will be a big stage for him. And I did have a follow when you're done.
Okay. I'll tell you, N'Kosi's had a really good year in all aspects of his life. I mean, he's been since we came back for the spring semester, even before the whole pandemic hit. Just his accountability, everything in our program, he's been the best he's been since he's been here. Really solid, and he's done a really nice job when he's been quarterbacking the offense. I mean, obviously N'Kosi's played in a lot of games. Done a lot of good things on the field. And again, I think just with some of the things we're doing in our offense and fits his skill set, helps him with his ability to make plays with his arm and with his feet. So he's just been very consistent to me. N'Kosi's been what you would expect, a guy who's continuing to mature, and becoming older, the typical development of a college football player. I think he's just going on that curve. And like I said, it's been fun to watch him continue to develop since he's been here. Tyler, we think Tyler's got a really, really bright future here. He impressed us the first 4 days he was here in the spring, and then when we came back in training camp, his ability to make some throws, I think has caught the eye of everybody on the football team. He's got some ability to move around and keep plays alive. Now just a young guy that just needs seasoning and just needs reps and at bats. But I think everybody has been impressed with what Tyler's done since he's showed up on campus.
Okay, and the follow was that knowing players are being afforded that extra year of eligibility by the NCAA. Will you try to get in a lot of younger players, maybe freshmen, that you normally wouldn't have thought of playing this early?
Well, we're going to try really, really hard to win the football game. And with whatever players we have to put in to win the football game, you have to put them in to win the football game. Now, to your point, yes, I mean, there are some decisions perhaps on special teams, depth charts, and things like that you don't have to worry about now that you did in the past. But really, even when they went to the 4-game redshirt rule early in the year, your roster might be a little bit bigger until you sort of figured it all out. But again, right now, when you look at our schedule, I mean, going 10 straight in the ACC and opening up with UAB and all the success they've had over the last 3 years, I mean, we're not worried about who's getting the game other than someone who else gives us a chance to secure a victory.
Thanks.
Okay, we've got time for 2 more questions. We'll go to Austin Perk from the Miami Hurricane. Austin, go ahead.
Perfect. I saw on the depth chart we saw Mark Pope now as the starting kickoff returner and punt returner. What do you expect to see from Pope this year? Obviously, he's very fast. What do you expect to see from him in the return game?
Well, first, make great decisions. That's the first thing in the return game. And again, all you have to do is look back at the Florida game a year ago. There's going to be a lot of good guys up in front of him on kickoff or on punt return blocking for him. But you got to be a great decision maker. If you look at KJ Osborne, and when he took over as our punt returner a year ago, KJ's decision making, his understanding of the position allowed the work of the guys in front of him to make some pretty big plays and become the top punt returner last year in the ACC. Same thing on kickoff, just to make sure when to bring it out, when to keep it in, and do those type of things. The big plays, it's no different than on offense. I mean, everybody has all these expectations, and look, the plays, just the way it always works, the plays come. And if you try to force them in the kicking game or force them on offense, or, you know, the sometimes the crazy expectations that every play is supposed to be a touchdown, that's just not the way it is. You know, and again, especially with the opposition that we're playing. So to me, what I tell Mark to do is just make great decisions, and the plays that are there to be made, make them.
Okay, we'll wrap up with one last question from David Lake. David, go ahead.
Yeah, Coach, wanted to see if you could tell us more just about BJ Jennings and his emergence during camp. Just what does he bring to the defense as a middle linebacker? And then also, too, real quick, how good do you feel about your kicker, your field goal kicking situation with the change you've made there from what you've seen in camp?
Well, Jose Borregales has changed our football team. I mean, obviously, if you look back at some of our issues a year ago, our inability to finish drives into points and to make easy layup field goals or PATs cost us wins, you know, and which cost us confidence. It's so many things. So I think Jose's a guy that the second he walked in, the very first time we did a field goal drill in spring practice, and when he, you know, nailed one through the uprights, I think the whole team erupted in applause. Because it's a confidence factor. You know, it's a confidence factor in how you call plays when you cross the 50-yard line. It's a confidence factor. And if you get into tight games, look, there's going to be a ton of tight football games this year in this conference. And again, with the next 11, the way that we're playing, so to have those guys that understand that you know that we can get those points, I think Jose provides a lot of confidence for everybody in our organization with that. In terms of Bradley Jennings, I mean, Bradley, since he's been here, I mean, it's been neck and neck with Shaq in terms of who the biggest hitters are on our football team. I mean, you know, Shaq was always a very physical presence at middle linebacker, and BJ right behind him wasn't very far behind. I mean, we've got some big hitters on our team. You know, Zach McLeod's a big hitter, Amari Carter, of course. We got some guys that can really lay the wood. But I'm talking about in the box, really lay the thump on some dudes. BJ's always been an extraordinarily explosive football player, which makes the injury he came back from all the more extraordinary, because, you know, the hip injury he had, and his ability to come back from that, and his rehab process, and to regain that pop and that explosiveness has really been, you know, it shows the hard work he did and the great work that our training staff and our PT staff did getting him back. He's been in our program for a long time, so he understands our defense very, very well, understands how the run fits work, understands the adjustments, can make all the calls to the people in front of him. You know, he's got that, I'm an older guy, so I'm comfortable, you know, setting the front and doing those types of things. So having that experience, you know, when you think about the weirdness of losing 2 4-year starters in Pickney and Shaq at Mike and Will, and you say, well, gosh, you know, and then all of a sudden you replace him with a guy that's your 5th year in the program and a guy that's your 4th year in the program. That just kind of helps us not lose a beat. And then we think we've got some super talented guys, you know, continuing to develop behind them.
Coach, thanks so much for your time. A reminder, Rhett Lashley and Blake Baker are up next. That's a separate Zoom link. And we hope to see all of y'all Thursday night at Hard Rock.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks, Manny.